We live in a world where everybody is constantly talking, at work, at home, and in this podcast. Over 2000 years ago, the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu warned us that too much talk can actually be harmful. Today, we're going to look at chapter 23 of his world-famous Tao Te Ching to find out what he actually meant. A few words only. This is the way of nature. A strong wind cannot last all morning. A sudden rain won't last all day. Who is creating all of this? Heaven and earth. If even heaven and earth cannot last for long, how much less can man? Therefore, those who follow the Tao are one with the Tao. Those who follow virtue are one with virtue. And those who lose are one with the loss. Those who are one with the Tao is happy to embrace them. Those who are one with virtue is happy to embrace them. And those who are one with loss is happy to embrace them. When trust is insufficient, there will be no trust in return. Hello and welcome to every one of you. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to look at chapter 23 of the world-famous Tao Te Ching, as you know. And, this one, it's a complicated one, but we're going to find our way through that. And, there are basically two parts in this chapter. And I'm not really sure whether in the original version of this text, those two parts were actually meant to be read as one chapter. I'm not so sure, because in the very old versions we have, there aren't chapters at all, so it's just one text. So the chapters, anyway, they had been added on later on. So and in this I'm not so sure, but I will get to that, why I'm not sure, and we're going to talk about it. So we begin with the first paragraph, with the first part. I'm going to read through it and then explain what is meant here. A few words only. This is the way of nature. A strong wind cannot last all morning. A sudden rain won't last all day. Who is creating all of this? Heaven and earth. If even heaven and earth cannot last for long, how much less can man? So this is the first part of this chapter. And I personally think that this would make in itself a whole chapter, because it's one corpus of meaning, I think. So what is he saying here? He's saying a few words only, this is the way of nature. And as always, Lao Tzu puts nature as being the main framework of existence. Nature as being the example of how things should be, okay? So the example here is that a strong wind cannot last all morning. Wind is passing by fastly, okay? And a sudden rain won't last all day. So rain that appears suddenly also goes suddenly. So it doesn't last for long. Because nature does it that way, heaven and earth is doing it that way. Also, the utterings of humans should be short and restricted, because that's the way of nature. And he's even saying, like, if even heaven and earth cannot last for long, how much less can man? Okay, so if heaven and earth keep themselves short, we as human beings should do that as well. Okay, that's the central statement of this first part. Okay, and then the next part begins with therefore. So this is kind of the linking word in the Chinese, therefore, which led to the conclusion that this is one chapter. But still, as we read through it, you might understand why I'm not sure about this one. So, therefore, those who follow the Tao are one with the Tao. Those who follow virtue are one with virtue, and those who lose are one with the loss. And you could add here, and some commentators on this text have thought that those who lose what? Lose the Tao. So you could also read it like those who lose the Tao are one with the loss of the Tao. But what is said here basically? It is said that whatever you identify yourself with, you become that. Okay, and this is a central statement of Taoism, that the Tao is the example of nature, the example of God, the example of the heavens, and the De is the virtue, which means to live like the Tao on earth and become an example of the Tao on earth. So you could think of it as like the example of the holy people, of the sages, and the normal people should follow the example of the sages. And so that's why it is the Tao Te Ching. Tao is the way of heaven, De is the way of heaven on earth, exemplified by people. That's the virtue, okay? The ways of heaven on earth, those are the virtues. And then, and as you are acting that out, you become that. So those who follow the Tao are one with the Tao. Those who follow virtue are one with virtue. And of course, those who lose are one with the loss. Okay? Because you act that out. So you become that. So if you lose the way of nature, you become one with the losing of nature. Okay? Because that's what you exemplify in that moment. Okay. So if we take those two parts together, one could argue that the Tao in the first part, the Tao is to speak only few words, because nature does as well. Okay, nature, sudden rain can't last all day. So nature keeps itself short. So people should keep their utterings of words short as well. And that is following the Tao, because that is what nature is doing. So that is what the Tao is showing us how to act. Okay. Those who follow virtue, you could say the virtue in this sense is to restrict your words. Okay, and this makes sense, right? Because if you think of wise people, they are wise because they don't utter every thought. It is not that wise people don't have stupid thoughts, right? But they don't say it. Okay, they wait till a wise thought comes, and then they think how they express it, and then they express it in few words at the right time, and then it's landing right. Okay. So I guess this is kind of, if you want to read this as one chapter, that's a way of connecting the two parts. So, and those who lose are one with the loss. So, and now you could say, like, lose what? Lose the Tao. So those who lose this ability to keep themselves short and exact in their speaking, they exemplify exactly this loss of ability to keep themselves smart and short. So they exemplify that. So that is basically what I'm reading out of this. And now comes the second part of the second part, which is those who are one with the Tao. The Tao is happy to embrace them. The one who are the those who are one with virtue, virtue is happy to embrace them. And those who are one with loss, loss is happy to embrace them. Okay. So it's basically it's basically the same which is said here as in the first part of the second part, which is that if you go with a Tao, it goes a step further though. If you go with the Tao, if you follow the Tao, if you become one with the Tao will open itself for you. The Tao is happy to embrace you. So the Tao not only it accepts that you come, it is happy to embrace you, which means the world will answer you in a positive way and even support you, because that is what embracing is about. Okay, so that's why I chose this translation, because I think it's the most fitting. The Tao is happy to embrace you. So if you go with the Tao is working for you. Meaning, if you keep yourself short in your speech, following the first part, the world will act on your words in a good way, in a positive way. The world will follow your words because you act in the right way with the world, with the Tao. Okay, so second line, those who are one with virtue, virtue is happy to embrace them. So those who act this out properly, the world will answer to that virtue with virtue. So you will touch other people in a positive way. Other people will then respond with virtue. Okay, so this is a circle. This is creating a good circle. So you're acting in virtue, the world answers you with virtue. Okay, so virtue is happy to embrace you, and this is a central Taoist idea. What you put out there will come back to you. Okay, this is a very simple but powerful idea of how the world works. Okay. So, next line. Those who are one with loss, loss is happy to embrace them. And this one is also very, very interesting, because every one of us knows the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So you think something bad will happen, it happens. Okay. You think you'll miss the train, you'll miss the train. You think you lose money, you lose money. So this is what is described here. If you identify yourself with loss, with not acting properly, with in this sense talk too much, then well, that will be happy to embrace you. So you will get a lot of useless words back from the world because you put so much useless words out there. And well, that's not the way of nature. So that is what will embrace you. That is what will be coming back to you from the world. Okay. So, and now comes the last sentence here. So, when trust is insufficient, there will be no trust in return. And this is very, very interesting, because if we want to read all of this as one chapter, which we do for the second, okay? When trust is insufficient, there will be no trust in return. Well, this is, at first, this is an example of karmic relationship, right? So, as I yell into the mountains will echo back at me. So, when I trust into my words, for example, I won't need many. When I trust in what I do little. Think of someone who's trustful. He knows what to do and he does just that. People who are distrustful, people who fear all the time, they do many things, right? They try to keep control of everything. They try to, well, not get lost at the same time while they're doing so many things. And in the end, they get lost and they fall, right? So that's when you're not trusting. So when you trust, you put trust out there and the world answers to you trustfully. So and those who trust, they don't need many words, right? Whereas the people who don't trust, when trust is insufficient, there will be no trust in return. So I think that's a very nice picture. So if you trust, you say just the words which are necessary, which are few, and you trust in the world that the world will act upon those few words. And the world will, because you trust, right? And if you do the opposite, there will be no trust in return. Okay, if you speak, if you just yell everything out there and don't know what you're doing, the world won't answer you with trust. You will get exactly that back. Okay. And this is also a kind of a quote, if you will, of chapter 17, where it is also said that the ones who do not trust will not be trusted. Right? He's talking about the good government in that chapter. I linked the video up here or there, whatever. Right. So, like I said in the beginning, if we want to read this as one chapter, which is indicated by this therefore word in the middle, then I think this is the right way to put it and to interpret it. My doubts considering this is, my doubt is that maybe those have been 2 chapters actually, because they do make sense if you take them apart actually. So you could take the first part, which I analyzed, as one, ending with, if heaven and earth cannot last for long, how much less can man? You could do that and it would make sense, right? That would be the few words only chapter. And it would make sense though. And then you could take the next part and make it a chapter, and that would be a chapter about what happens when you give yourself fully into the Tao and act out virtue, and what's the difference between that and losing the Tao, right? And what happens and what that has to do with trust. So that could be useful interpretation of only the second part, which in that case would be a whole chapter in its own right. Okay, so whatever, I did my best to interpret this as one chapter, and I think you can make sense out of it, but what do you think? Do you think this is meant as one? Do you think those were 2 chapters and later on someone added this little Chinese character therefore because he wanted to make sense out of it? What do you think? Yeah, that's actually a question to be solved in the future. So that's it for this chapter. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you stay with me and join me again in chapter 24. I enjoyed it very much. And I wish you a pleasant week. Farewell and bye-bye.